Mr. Speaker. It's a difficult day, difficult week in the world. I appreciate the tribute of my friend Bill Flores for a great American hero. Also want to pay tribute today to our US Ambassador Chris Stevens and 3 others who were killed in Libya in the service of their country. We grieve for their families. We grieve for their friends and all who may have come to harm and will come to harm, hopefully no more, but our thoughts and prayers are with them. It is important during times when Americans are attacked and American soil, American buildings are attacked, which is what an American embassy is, that the world understand that there will be consequences. For those who sometimes want to ask, well, aren't you a Christian? Don't you believe in turning the other cheek? The answer is yes, individually. But there is a different charge for the government. There is a different charge for the people who have the responsibility of government and protecting the people and their rights. The United States government has the obligation to protect our citizens, to protect those who are serving this country, and as far as our military, to give them everything they need to win whatever it takes, give them rules of engagement to allow them to win at all, whatever it takes, and then come home. So it grieves me much also to see that a time when people are dying not for a wishy-washy government in Washington, D.C. that can't decide what its priorities are, but for the ideals for which America stands and for what it represents to people who yearn for freedom around the world. And it does not help when an administration, in response to American attacks on American soil and American individuals, the administration ends up asking Americans to give up their First Amendment rights for which our service members are fighting. It doesn't help when a general calls an American and asks an American to give up your First Amendment rights rather than proclaiming to the world, we're the United States military, you've attacked our country, you've attacked our brothers and sisters, and you will pay for that. That, when we took an oath to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, it means that when enemies who are foreign enemies attack American soil, attack Americans because they're Americans, we have an obligation. If they were not protected and they got hurt or killed, we have an obligation to those who would serve behind them, to those who are in this country, to protect them for the future. And that doesn't come when an administration or even a general turns around and says, hey, I know I took an oath to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. We think by your utilizing your First Amendment rights, it may be offending people around the world. So why don't you just subject your First Amendment rights to Sharia law? And so it's okay to burn a Bible, that's okay. Okay to burn a flag, okay, that's all right. But just, for heaven's sake, don't say anything that might offend someone of the Islamic religion. Well, I personally don't think anybody should do that. But I certainly do think we should defend ourselves against radical Islamists that want to annihilate this country and destroy our way of life. We have an obligation. We took an oath to do that. Not an oath to say, let's give up the Constitution I took an oath to defend and subject it to Sharia. No. Let's give that up so that maybe the people that are killing Americans and the people that are attacking our embassies, maybe they won't feel so offended, and maybe they won't kill people. That is not the role of a general. It's not the role of a general to tell former military members that they should never speak out against a commander-in-chief when, as former members of the military, they're in a good place to be able to judge what's going on, because it is and should be a crime within the military to create problems for good order and discipline by publicly demeaning or condemning anyone in your chain of command. My 4 years at Fort Benning, we knew that. President Carter drove me crazy with his ineptitude, his inability to make decisions, make the tough calls, his pathetic handling of the attack on our American embassy in Tehran, for which America still pays for the pathetic way it was handled. For those of us who've been in the military, there's an obligation. When you see the same mistakes being repeated, since you know that those in uniform cannot step up and criticize the chain of command, we have an obligation to do that, and it is not helpful for anyone with stars on their shoulders to tell former military members, oh, this is not appropriate for you to criticize my boss. How about the person with stars on their shoulders stepping up and doing the criticism privately on behalf of the soldiers he's supposed to be commanding and protecting? Well, there's stories that are coming out. Time will tell. This one from Fox News today, entitled "U.S. Officials Suspect Strike on Benghazi Post Coordinated, Timed for 9/11 Anniversary." U.S. officials are increasingly suspicious that the murder Tuesday of the U.S. Ambassador to Libya, Christopher Stevens, and 3 other American officials was not the result of a protest against anti-Islam film, but instead was a coordinated terrorist strike timed for the 11th anniversary of the September 11 attacks. A senior administration official told Fox News that they are exhaustively investigating every angle of the attack in Benghazi and an earlier assault on the U.S. Embassy in Cairo, Egypt, but there are early signs that the Benghazi assault may have been planned. The official cautioned, though, that the administration has not jumped to any conclusions about what happened, saying it would be premature to do so. The article goes on down, and it quotes different people. One, Pete Huckstra, former chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, who told Fox News that the attack appeared to have the markings of an al-Qaeda or al-Qaeda-affiliated strike. Quotes him as saying, "We've been talking for years about the desire of al-Qaeda, radical jihadists, to celebrate the anniversary of 9/11. All of my background, all of the conversations that I've had over the last 18 hours lead many people to believe that this was just more than a mere coincidence." Hexter noted that the supposed protesters purportedly angry over a film that ridiculed Islam's prophet Muhammad didn't attack in Tripoli. They attacked in Benghazi. where it so happens our ambassador is. And they happen to be fully armed and fully equipped. Huckster noted that al-Qaeda chief Ayman al-Zawahiri had recently released a video calling on militants to attack Americans in revenge for the killing of an operative in Pakistan. The message said, "His blood is calling on you, inciting you to fight and kill the Crusaders." Huckster said the film may have been just a cover to carry out such an attack. Two intelligence officials also said the attack looked coordinated. London-based think tank Quililium, same conclusion, saying the Benghazi strike appeared to be a well-planned terrorist attack that would have occurred regardless of the demonstration over the film. Also, the brother of Zawahiri was nearby during the separate protests at the American Embassy in Cairo on Tuesday. There's so much going on. But the last thing, one of the last things that people ought to do is say it's time to give up First Amendment rights. One of the goals that we know for the Muslim Brotherhood in the United States within 10 years, was that one of their 10-year goals was to subjugate the U.S. Constitution to Sharia law. There are great patriots who have called upon Americans to perhaps make it illegal to speak out and offend or do anything that might offend worshipers of Islam without saying the same thing about any other religion, whether it's Buddhist, Christian, whatever. If they have their way, and if we make the mistake of curtailing our constitutional rights to avoid offending people who want to annihilate us anyway and want to have an international caliphate where they rule over us anyway, those they don't destroy, we make a major error. For those who say there should be no criticism of members of Congress, people in the government, as to the handling by the Commander-in-Chief, I think we have an obligation, since we know people in uniform cannot speak out when they see mistakes by their commanders. We have an obligation to them to speak out. But I do make this pledge to my friends across the aisle that in any criticism, I will endeavor to ensure that I personally do not ever make the kind of wild-eyed allegations against this president that were leveled at President Bush by them. How quickly some people forget. Also, I understand this is a political season. It is a time when people are running for election and re-election. We all know that. But we have a friend. We have a prime minister of a friendly nation who has been mistreated by this administration, who deserves better treatment by this administration, who deserves to have this administration and this president keep their words that have been given to our friends in Israel. And it wouldn't hurt to meet with such a leader. We know that in July that there were people who came to the White House for meetings in the White House, one of whom was a member of a known terrorist organization, and that terrorist was allowed into the White House. Now, obviously from the hearing we had with Secretary of Homeland Security Janet Napolitano, from a response she gave to me, she was ignorant of the fact that we had a terrorist going into the White House for meetings. But by the next day, when she testified, I believe, across in the Senate, she had become aware that we had a terrorist, a member of a terrorist organization meeting in the White House. And apparently this administration intends to continue meeting with members of known terrorist organizations from what was said back in July. And yet, the president, though time for meetings with known terrorists, will not carve out a little time to meet with the Prime Minister of our dear friend Israel at a time when Israel and many in the United States suspect that Iran may be 2 months away from having the nukes to carry out another Holocaust. We don't know the specific days there may be. But it would seem that you wouldn't necessarily need a rocket to have pinpoint accuracy if it's carrying a nuclear weapon. And now that we have seen trouble on the borders of Israel, all around Israel almost, it doesn't seem it would be impossible to get one smuggled in. The rockets smuggled in by the hundreds that are routinely fired into Israel from the Gaza Strip. That's why there was a legitimate legal blockade to try to prevent those type things from coming into the Gaza Strip, but they came in anyway, and they continue to come in. We owe our friend, our ally, who this president has pressured, has cajoled, has ridiculed, has snubbed, and taunted by saying, just trust us, we'll take care of Iran. Don't worry about your national security. Yeah, trust us. No nation should be told that they cannot invoke self-defense when their nation is at risk of being annihilated. Remember learning in college that President Eisenhower had ordered that people from towns surrounding areas of these concentration camps, where when totaled together 6 million Jews were killed, murdered, tortured, maimed. But he ordered that the people from the towns be required to come help clean up. And the reasoning was so that no one could ever say the Holocaust never happened, because they cleaned up the atrocity. And I remember thinking, now that was a little overboard for General Eisenhower. Really? You had to rub those people's noses in such horrible, horrible affliction. And it hadn't been that long ago I had these thoughts. And now we have people like leaders of countries like Iran that is about to have nuclear weapons if we don't intercede, who have said just that. The Holocaust never happened. It was a hoax. Unbelievable. It is unbelievable to me that in a matter of decades, since World War II, since that horrible Holocaust, such an indictment against the human race, that people could do that to one race, that people could do that to one race. It's just almost unfathomable that even in Europe, where those atrocities were committed, a genocide was attempted, that we would see this growing anti-Semitism raising its ugly head again. And at the same time, anti-Semitism is growing even in Europe, a civilized area, an educated area. And it grows around the world. And as we see people in the Middle East begin to have dreams of a new Ottoman Empire where every religion will be subjected to some of what we've seen happen in those countries where we help bring about an Arab Spring that's turned into a winter nightmare. This is not a time to play petty personal games, to snub leaders of friends, of allies, even when you disagree with them, for heaven's sake. Take a little time from a fundraiser. Take a little time that you don't go to the golf course and meet with a leader of a country that sees hatred for its people, anti-Semitism, the racism, the bigotry growing around the world, who is scared for its own existence, who can't be sure that we're going to be there with them because of the actions of this administration. Take a little time to meet with them. I mean, it is an inconvenient thing to have to be president when you're really best at running for office. But take some time and be president and meet with our friends. The messages that are going out to those who we seek to make allies for the future is not a good message. The people that have laid down their lives for the American ideal deserve the best we can give them. And so, on this day, when we grieve and our flags are at half-mast for the atrocity committed against our ambassador and others, our thoughts and prayers are with the families, and our thoughts and prayers are that our leadership will become what it should be to protect America. With that, I yield back.